Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Steelheads Weekly with myself, Darius Domingues, and Mark Freitas. Mark, how you doing this week?
I'm doing well, a little bit under the weather, but we're gonna get through today's episode and discuss a very disappointing week in Brampton Steelheads hockey.
That's right. It was a bit of a disappointing week, and thanks for trucking through this, by the way, because there is a lot going around here right now.
Yeah,
So, a lot of people are sick, and the weather's changing, all that good stuff. But that means hockey is back in full
yeah.
swing, and obviously the NHL is back in full swing. But yeah, disappointing weekend for the Brampton Steelheads. They had only two games this week and lost both of them. And we're going to break down both of those games. And we knew that the schedule wasn't going to be kind. And we kind of touched on it last week to the Steelheads to start the season. But I think that this week, especially without their starting goaltender who got suspended, I'm not even sure if we mentioned that on the last episode because I think it happened right after. Obviously, Jack Ivankovic suspended for 4 games for his fight that we mentioned in last week's episode against the Niagara Ice Dogs. So he has not been with the team.
No, he hasn't. So he's out for 4 games. So the team has to rely on their backup,
Jacob
Jacob
Gibbons.
Gibbons,
Yeah.
and it's been a rough start for the kid, unfortunately, and you hope he does well, but it hasn't been a good start for him.
And you know what? Like, there has been moments that at least I've seen in the last 2 games that, and I wasn't there on Friday, and you were, and we're gonna get into the game and what you
Yeah,
saw, but there have been moments where I'm like, okay, all right, because at the end of the day, he is inexperienced, right, in the league, so you try to look for some positives there, and you're like, all right, he's playing well, but at the end of the day, the team hasn't been playing well in front of him either, right? There's a lot of mistakes and stuff, and we'll get to that, but yeah,
yeah.
unfortunate that like I mean, when you look at the league stats, because I was pulling them up just before we were recording here, Ivan Kovic is second in goals against average and he's first in save percentage. Like, he is really that good for this team,
He
right? So,
has. He's been lights out. He's literally the backbone of this team and in net. And eh, they're gonna ride on him until they can no more, until they can get some success.
yeah. And I mean, it's him at first, like I said, in save percentage at a 936, which is absurd because, I mean, if it stays there, I mean, he's one of the best goalies of all time. But, it is early in the season still, but still great numbers. Like, he is the backbone, like you said. So, I mean, like, without him, it's going to be tough. Like, they're going to rely on him a lot, and I think that's obviously what the plan was when they moved out Ryerson Leanders, right? And they brought in Jacob Gibbons. But yeah, I mean, you're feeding Jacob Gibbons at the same time to a lot of really good teams out of necessity because
Hmm.
Ivan Kovic suspended. So I don't really blame him. Like, you would expect Gibbons to get like 1 game out of 3 in a week where they're playing 3 games and they're playing somebody lower in the conference, right? Or one of the last place teams in the league. So, not to discredit what Gibbons has done. I thought he came in, he played okay. It's not like they got blown out or anything. Like, I thought at times gave them a chance to win, but not great games for the Steelheads. But I think, yeah, go ahead.
No, yeah, no, I agree with you on that. He looked a little shaky in a couple of the games that they've been playing in.
I mean, and he's new to the team, he's new to the system, so I think things will improve. And as Ivan Kovic comes back, obviously they'll play them accordingly. But anyway,
Yeah,
to dive into the first game, obviously Winter Spitfires are coming to town. Red hot Winter Spitfires haven't lost in regulation yet. They are a wagon right now. They are an absolute on a heater to start the season. They come into the CAA Center on Friday night. Unfortunately, I wasn't there. Mark, what did you see? It was a really high scoring game. I mean, the Steelheads looked like they were in it for sure at times, and then there's other times where it was like, man, like I wish they could keep
they
up with this team.
looked. Oof, they did. In my opinion, I thought they didn't look good at all. They scored early, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
They're up 2-0, and as soon as they're up 2-0, it's like they stopped playing. They couldn't make a pass. Something you and I talked about last year was that they don't stay out of the box. So that's been trouble for them. It wasn't all Gibbons. Like, I'm not going to blame it on a goalie, but there was some saves he could have made. Um, and the team just looked flat after they're up two. They just seemed like they didn't care. They were making silly plays, and it costed them in the end, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
I was hoping that they would learn from that, but I guess they didn't learn it from it during the next game either.
I mean, penalties have been a problem with this franchise going back probably 15, 16 years. So it's a real issue. And again, I mean, they're taking penalties that they shouldn't, and also because they're tired, maybe they should like, you know what I mean? Like they get pinned
Yeah.
sometimes. They take these dumb penalties. Sometimes they take really dumb penalties. And it's not just like any single one person. It's like a team thing. For some reason, they take really dumb penalties in not opportune times. Not that any time is opportune to take a penalty, but it's an issue, and it's continued into this year, and it's happening again. Like you said, they go up 2-0, they get into penalty trouble. All of a sudden, you're not up 2-0 anymore. You stop playing because they're used to going up by a big score this year, because they score early and often. That's been the theme
Yeah.
this year, right?
Yes, they
So
have.
obviously, it's been an issue this year.
It has, and then Windsor did a good job at shutting down Martone and Rycroft. I mean, they extended their point streaks that they got going on. But I want to kind of talk about the Steelheads like as a whole in the lineup. They need more from guys like such as not Zidlicki, he's done well, but they need more from guys like Zabeski. Misa's been disappointing. I haven't noticed him on the ice whenever I've seen him play this year, and it's been kind of disappointing, you know?
Yeah, I mean, for a guy who was just drafted as well, I mean, you're expecting big things coming into this year, and he's kind of slid down the depth chart a lot in the lineup because
Yes.
of new acquisitions, and obviously they're trying to improve the team. But like you said, maybe it's just a product of him sliding down the depth chart. He's not playing as much, right? It could be a little bit of that, but at the same time, I don't know if he's making the best use out of his minutes. And the second half of last year, it's not like he kind of went away, but he was one of those players that, like, you could see Martone kind of move into the forefront of. I'm talking about last year, the
Yeah.
last half of last year, kind of move into that. You can rely on him in that big moment player, and it's continued into this year. But Misa's kind of taken a step back, whereas like you've been in the league for a couple of years, right? And it's not just him. We're not going to pinpoint him. There's a lot of guys, like you said, their depth needs to come up bigger because as the season continues to go on, I mean, we're getting into it now. We're almost in November, right? So they've played quite a few
Right.
games here where we can notice a few things. And like you said, Winter tried to shut down Martone and Raycroft, and they didn't do a great job, but it's hard to shut them down. They're the leading scorers in the league, and again, another 3 points for each of them that night. But it's getting harder to shut them down. But the gap, this is the point I was trying to make, sorry, to round it out. The gap in between Martone, or the first line in general, and everybody else is getting huge. And I think that's going to be a
Yeah.
problem. And it's not a problem in terms of Martone has 16 points, right? And they haven't even played 10 games. Fantastic. He's playing really well. But what is the second line doing? What is the third line doing? The fourth line barely plays, and that is JR hockey at times. Like the fourth line will barely play unless it's a blowout. But, the gap is getting that much bigger, and I think that could be a problem as you go down the stretch in the season and into the playoffs.
Yeah, and that's where it cost them last year, so they got to clean it up rather sooner than later. Um, and again, like they should play that fourth line more if you want to get the most of the depth guys, but again, they don't. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not the biggest fan of the fourth line. I don't know what they contribute to the team. Um,
Well, they don't play that much. That's always
no,
kind of
that's
been
the
the
thing,
thing since maybe 2016. They don't
right?
play at
And that's the
all.
thing. It's like whenever they're on the ice, like they're either getting scored on, or when they try to generate a chance, they nothing happens.
Yeah. And
So
it might have something to do with the fact that they aren't playing. I'm going to go back to the ice time thing a lot because they're not playing. So when they do get out there, it's like you've been sitting for 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes. It's hard to get things going, right? But
yeah,
you do have to try and perform when you're called upon. But again, they are played very, very little on this team. And it's
yeah.
been a thing
And
for quite a long time.
other teams, it looks like they play everybody. So I don't know what it is with Brampton, but it's a problem. As well as Brampton did get lucky as well. I did text you during the game
Hmm.
that Martone went hard into the boards
Yep.
with one of the Windsor players. Like they were going full speed. I'd say they both lost their balance, and like Martone slammed into the boards. They were lucky that he was okay.
He
He
did
didn't need
need
to be.
assistance, right? To
Yes,
to
he
get
he
off.
needed
Yeah.
a little bit of assistance to get off, but he was good. He came up for the next shift,
Yeah.
so they were lucky about that.
But they got a little bit lucky with that. Obviously, you never like to see somebody go down with injury, and
Yeah,
obviously your best player, and he has been your best player this year by quite
yeah,
a bit. So Nice to see him back, and obviously he was back in the lineup the next night. So obviously, to move forward a little bit into the next game, the next night they move on to Barrie, where they're playing the Barrie Colts, who are a pretty good team this year, and they're projected to be a decent team in the standings this season. Not a great game again. You go up 1-0, score early, right? That's been something that has not been a problem for the Steelheads so far this year. They're scoring early and often. But the often part did not come in this game. They
Right.
It kind of got away from them immediately after that, or in the second
No.
period, I should say.
Barry is like we've talked. Barry is a good team, and they can't beat. Oh, I mean, it's true they can beat them at home, but they can never beat them in Barry.
No, I think we talked about it on the preview leading up to this week last week, where we're like Barry is not kind to this team. Like that arena,
No.
it's not even just the team playing in that arena is not kind to this team. They haven't been able to figure it out. It's a tough game every time. There's certain buildings that this team, it's not that they can't play there, but it's always a tough game, and this is always that building.
Yeah, it's similar to Toronto when they go to Buffalo. Just,
Right?
just
Yeah.
can't win there.
Yeah. So for some reason, even though there's so many Leaf fans that end up in Buffalo, but
Yeah.
yeah, Zidlicki, like you mentioned, I mean, he's started pretty well. I think I was looking for him to start really well this season too. He started pretty well. He got on the board very early again, and then it just became all Colts, and it was all Colts until the very end of the game, where Zabeski scores and gets the Steelheads feeling somewhat good. Like you want to end the game scoring last, I guess, maybe if that's your
Yeah.
silver lining for the game, you get some on the board. But there was really not much going for the Steelheads in this game, and it's a little concerning. Your top guys finally, I think, went away in this game. Like that's the first time that happened this year.
Yeah. It has, and uh, again, they will have games like that where it does happen. So it's just finding a way to bounce back from it and not make it a bad habit where it turns into like 2 games, 3 games, 4 games
Yeah.
where their top line doesn't do anything. So, um, eventually it's bound to happen. But I guess it was their first time basically this season. It's happened. Oh no, maybe second. They lost to Niagara. They were
Right.
shut down
There
pretty
was
well.
that. Yeah, they were shut down pretty well against that team. And Niagara is, tops in the conference right now as well. So
Yeah,
not a bad loss if you want to frame it that way. Again, to Windsor too. Like you're losing to pretty good teams, but obviously you want to win. You want to be tops in the league.
yeah,
But yeah, shut down again. So not much to take from that game. It's going to happen as long as they bounce back pretty well. I think it's fine. They've obviously started really well. I just, when you look at the points and it's like, 16 points in 6 games or 7 games, it's like, whoa, that's crazy. But it's like if you're getting shut down, if you're really getting a lot of points in only a couple games and then you're getting shut down, in those
yeah.
other games and you're letting that happen more consistently, that's something I'm going to start watching for, right? Like how often do they get shut down completely? Because that's going to be an issue come
Exactly.
playoffs, right? But if they can keep it consistent through the whole season, which I think they can, still early, right? Still
Yep,
very early in the season, then I think they might be okay. But
they'll be all right.
yeah, I think they'll be okay. But obviously, I think the theme so far this year is obviously the top guys are your top guys. Everyone else has got to kind of pull their weight at this point. Like you're seeing a huge gap at this point, especially with the depth. The depth has been good. There's been Carmiers we talked about. He's been great.
Yep.
But certain guys got to start trying to close that gap at least. And it's going to be hard to do because Martone and Raycroft, fantastic players, but you got to try.
It's basically like Porter Martone and Carson Raycroft. Oh, also on the Brandon Steelheads.
Right. Yeah.
Essentially, that's what it feels like.
Which is okay because they are fantastic players. But and obviously things will be helped once Ivan Kovic
Yeah.
comes back, which he is still suspended for another 2 games. And speaking of 2 games, the Steelheads only have 2 games coming up this week. And they're both at home. They do not go on the road again until October 27th. So a little bit of a homestand here, if you want to call it that. It's only 3 games spanning over 2 weeks. But
Nice.
they play the Ottawa 67s on October 18th. That is at home. And then the next day at 4 o'clock, kind of weird, 7 o'clock and then 4 o'clock the next day. I know they're both at home, but not too
The
much
boys
time
got to
between
sleep
games.
in somehow.
I guess they got to sleep in, right? No morning skate. But then on Saturday, October 19th, they play the Saginaw Spirit. Misa versus Misa. Wouldn't it be a great time for Luke Misa to have a great game here against the Saginaw Spirit? So those are the 2 games coming up. Mark, what do you see? I know what I see in Saginaw on Saturday, but what are we seeing, in those 2 games?
We're hopefully seeing the Steelers probably get back into the win column against a very young Ottawa 67s team. They're in 6 games. They're 3-3 this year, which isn't too bad. So it's always nice when they play Ottawa. There's a nice little rivalry there. especially with former Mississauga coach Dave Cameron still in the fold there.
That's right.
James Boyd,
James Boyd
can't
GM.
forget that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Former
So,
Steelheads GM.
yep. So we'll see how it goes for them, and I expect them to bounce back on Friday,
Yeah.
especially with a team like Ottawa.
I would suspect that the big guys will come to play to kind of take over that game. Ottawa's a young team, like you said, and they're kind of, you know, in between here. Obviously, 3-3 on the season. Like we don't know exactly what they are yet, and then we know
Yeah,
what Saginaw is. Like they
yeah.
have big time aspirations this season. Memorial Cup champions last year. They went deep in the playoffs last year. They have Michael Misa, who's been fantastic so far this year too, up their tops in the league with Martone, for example, in points. That's going to be a tough game, especially second half
Oh
of
yeah.
back to back. I know it's at home, so that helps, but that will be a really, really good game.
Yeah, it sucks. Every time Saginaw comes in, it feels like you and I can never make it out
Fortunately,
for this
can't
one.
make it. Yeah, so we won't be there for
Yeah,
that one.
it's
Probably
what
will see Ottawa.
30 year in a row.
Yeah. So
I think we're just bad luck to see Saginaw.
maybe. I know they only come once. That's me in London usually. I was able to see London this year, which was nice. But
Yeah,
usually me in London, unfortunately, we can't make a date of it.
yeah.
But yeah, Saginaw coming in this year, it's going to be a great game. Misa versus Misa. And the thing is, the last couple of years, because he's been in the league already a couple of years now, which is hard to believe, but it's been Misa versus Misa the whole time. But unfortunately, one Misa would not be playing in those last couple of games, so that they have faced off. But this year, it looks like they'll both be in the lineup and they'll be playing each other. It should be a good game.
Oh, for sure. It's always good when these two, well, brothers, um, get together and play each other because they have played against each other whenever still has to go to Saginaw, just whenever
They're here.
Saginaw comes to Mrs. Brampton.
Or Mississauga in the past. Yeah, it
Yeah,
hasn't
or
worked.
Mississauga. Yeah,
Hasn't worked out, but yeah, it should be a great weekend of Steelheads hockey again. And then looking forward, I mean, Ivan Kovic returns on the 25th, so Gibbons will have to hold down the fort in these two games, and I think he'll be able to do it. Saginaw might be a tough challenge, but Ottawa, I don't want to discredit them, but I think the Steelheads should come away with a win there.
now, what happens if they lose these next two games? Did they go out and look for another backup?
I think it's time to start thinking about that for sure, because obviously Ivan Kovic's going to come back, but then you have to think, what if he gets injured? What if something happens where you can't play a game or here or there, because you're playing a lot of really good teams, right? So got
Yep.
to start thinking about that, I think, if that happens. But I think the team is good enough in their team defense. The whole roster is good enough, and I don't think Gibbons is bad, right? I don't think he's
No, he's
bad.
a big boy.
Yeah, he's a big boy. Maybe inexperienced, but I think he can help them along here, and they should get. I think they should win both games, but they'll definitely come out of this weekend. Worst case scenario, 1-1. If you come out of this weekend 0-2, it's time to start looking, I think. But I
For
think
sure.
that's the least of their problems at this point, to be honest.
Oh, for sure. We'll see what happens this weekend.
Yeah, I think there's other things to focus on with the team,
Yeah,
at least to get going first before you start looking at the goaltending. Because once Ivan Kovic comes back, if he stays healthy, he's the answer. He's the guy. So it should be fun.
exactly.
Yeah. But should be a fun weekend of Steelheads hockey. And I guess we'll see you all in the next episode.